What's up? This is Dan Fredenberg for FigureItOut.com and WhoAreYouHelping.com. And today I'm with attorney, author, advocate for mental health and addiction recovery, Brian Cuban. How are you doing today, Brian?
Hey Dan, how are you doing, my man?
I'm great. I'm so glad that you came here, and thank you so much for being here. But for those of you who have never seen a Figure It Out episode or interview, the topics we usually tackle are somewhat cerebral, and the dream job interviews that I have here, they have a recurring theme of how someone with no friends, family, or cash can achieve what the guest has. Now, money isn't everything, as I'm sure Brian can attest, and sometimes what the guest has achieved that another might want to follow in the same path for isn't a job or about dollars or cents. In this case, we're talking about something that many people aspire towards, and Brian may disagree with me, but I think having friends, family, and cash doesn't help with addiction and trying to sober up. So even
I might, yeah, because
okay.
family can be very important.
I'm sure if they're around, and I want to get real deep into that. But you're also an author, and the bigger dream that, in my view anyway, that you've achieved is it's now over 14 years sober from booze and cocaine, right?
Correct.
Excellent, excellent. And he's written about specifically how people in the law profession are particularly at risk of mental health issues and unbalanced levels of consumption of drugs and alcohol. But before we get into that, I want to talk about your foray into fiction writing with your book.
Yeah. Here it is.
Excellent, excellent. Yeah, I got the digital version. I'm over 60% of the way through.
You enjoying it?
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, I am. I actually I meant to ask you before this, as far as like one of the things that concerned me because I don't know you well. It's your first foray into fiction. I really enjoyed your nonfiction. I was worried that I wasn't going to like it that much and I'd have to fake it, but I actually really enjoyed it as far as how much I am, and I'm glad that I don't know the end, so I can't ruin it for everybody. So that's very important. But as far as the ambulance chaser goes, you and I crossed paths on LinkedIn. This is our first time speaking.
Sure.
So, but I don't know how you usually introduce yourself, Brian. So can you please introduce yourself to the audience,
Sure.
please?
Well, first and foremost, I'm a person in long-term recovery. I'm actually rolling into 15 years free of drug and alcohol use. Cocaine and alcohol were my drugs of choice, and abstinence obviously is my pathway, although there are many other recovery pathways. I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, PA. I'm the middle of three boys. A lot of people know my older brother, Mark, from Shark Tank and the Mavs. I have a younger brother, Jeff. We all live walking distance to each other here in Dallas, Texas, believe it or not. We can walk to each other's houses, and that's not an accident. We're very close. I went to Penn State University, the University of Pittsburgh School of Law. I've never practiced, even though the ambulance chaser takes place in Pittsburgh. I passed the Pennsylvania bar, but I moved to Dallas right after that, Labor Day 1986. So I've always practiced in Dallas, Texas. Uh, I've struggled mightily here in Dallas. I have with the drugs and the alcohol. Also, 2 trips to a psychiatric hospital. I've been arrested. 3 failed marriages. One more, I get a free set of steak knives, and finally my recovery Easter weekend 2007. And in between all that, I lost my career as a lawyer. And when I finally found recovery, realized I never wanted to be a lawyer in the first place. So not only trying to find redemption, but reinvent myself is what hopefully I've done. As both now not a practicing lawyer, but as now a 3-time author.
That's really excellent. And you're now in your 60s, and that's when you
60.
jumped in.
Yeah, 60.
60. Okay.
Don't push me to the grave before.
Oh, okay. Well, I heard that technically, if it starts with a 0, you're still in the previous decade. So you're just
That's right.
finishing off your 50s.
There you go. There you go. There you
Yeah,
go.
yeah.
But they say 60 is the new 59, so I'm okay.
And it is. But I wrote this outline before your book was released yesterday, and I feel that your work answered this next question in my mind. But the question I had was, do you think any time is a great age to write a novel, or do you think that someone your age has any advantages to writing?
Just like recovery is ageless, you can recovery at any time. Becoming a novel is ageless. I just read, I forget her name, but she released her first book of poems in her 90s. And I only saw it because it went viral on Twitter. And I think she became a USA after it went viral on Twitter. She was a USA Today or whatever best-selling author. So so no, there's no age limit to writing, right? Just like there's no age limit to finding recovery.
That's amazing. And like what I was going to mention is that I have to make a lot of online content, and experience is an enormous part of my ability to do that. And one thing I loved in your book is how the legal pointers are sprinkled through the book, like how you should not accept any voluntary searches or exit your home to speak to the police without a warrant. Like I didn't know that one, that you don't step outside of your doorstep to speak to the police unless they have a warrant. But like what do you? Yeah, go ahead.
The funny thing about that is you have to remember I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. I had a lot of wonderful Pittsburgh lawyers because I have a Pittsburgh where I went to law school and everything. I have a lot of friends there in the legal profession who helped me with the finer points of Pittsburgh law. So yeah, and so you have to remember also it's fiction. I mean, there's a lot of stuff in there that probably isn't true in terms of actual, but you fictionalize things because it's got to be entertaining, right? The real practice of law is boring. Whether it's there's a lot of boring stuff. So you fictionalize it, just like when you watch whether it's The Verdict, the original drunken lawyer trope, right? Paul Newman as Galvin,
Right.
And then different, presumed innocent, and all those different types of legal thrillers or courtroom thrillers. None of them are. I mean, you can go through them and pick them apart. But I wanted the Ambulance Chaser to be entertaining, fun, and fast. And it is not a literary novel, right? It's a genre novel. And so far, what I've seen is that's what people say. It's entertaining, fun, and fast.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. With the fast part too, and I've interviewed a few different attorneys, and I've tried to including on this Figure It Out series where I'm saying how do you get there with no friends, family, or cash, and of course like whenever there's college education involved, it's like that gets pretty sticky. You're kind of stuck with having to get a scholarship or something like that. But
I went to school on grants. My father ran you know what a trim shop is?
No, I do not.
They reupholster seats and they put on convertible tops. My father ran a trim shop from the end of the Korean War. He fought in the Pacific in Okinawa and then fought in Korea. He's been past 3.5 years now, but he just ran a trim shop. We didn't have money. I mean, we had obviously there's privilege as compared to other people is still privilege, right?
Right.
So we had money, so we never went for wanting, but we didn't have college. Parents pay for college money, so I went on grants and loans and my parents didn't pay for my college, so I get it. Believe me.
Yeah, it's for Lee. I don't want to get too far into the weeds here, but when it comes to legal, the couple things that hit me are that I understand that whenever you pick up a client, they're already in a ton of trouble. So it's already
coming to you because things are good in the legal profession, right?
Yeah.
unless you're like in restructuring but if you're a criminal defense lawyer or a family lawyer or just a PI lawyer, personal injury lawyer, which I get a lot of, hence the Ambulance Chaser. No one's coming to you because things are good.
Yeah, that's funny because like I'm the cautious type, so like I ended up going up to a few lawyers like when I was moving my business from Taiwan over here to Canada. But my background, just for anybody who doesn't know me, it's in digital marketing and the IT security that's involved with accepting credit cards. But I did this social media experiment to make sure that I understood the state of organic reach, and part of that was writing my own nonfiction book. So I know that promoting a book is extremely taxing.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, and you actually reached out to 10,000 LinkedIn connections personally
individually, no bot, no automation. Now
that really is amazing.
That doesn't mean every person got a specific message based on their, every email had the same points, right?
Right.
But when you see something, I did change it up, and I did it myself. That took months.
Right.
And I was doing it from morning to evening, but I did it. No one can market yourself like you do.
Right. Yeah, that's absolutely true. So as far as that process goes, like honestly, as a tech guy, I'm also a little bit surprised that LinkedIn never suspended you for too many profile views or connection requests or direct messages.
I didn't send correct. I mean, I already had over 10,000 connection requests. I didn't send any. I sent messages to the people I'm already connected to, and I used up all my LinkedIn mails to
Right.
send ones to my to the people who were following me, but I wasn't connected, right? Because
Hmm.
I have about 15,000 people who follow me, but I'm connected to about just over, actually first level connection
Right.
to about 10,000 of them. So you can send them, I think it's about 500 a day
Hmm.
messages. So you get a feel for, when LinkedIn's going to shut you down. And I ran into that a couple times, but they don't boot you or anything. They just stop you from sending messages, just like Facebook does, right?
Yeah.
Facebook's even more brutal because after about 150, they'll shut you down for 24 hours.
Right, right. Wow, that's really interesting because, like you mentioned that not using bots or anything like that, and that's something that I think a lot of people are, they're being a little bit unscrupulous with that
Well, the
on LinkedIn.
problem with automation is you can't, people know when it's automated. I started actually saying this at the bottom, this isn't automated, this is me.
Right.
Because if people think you're actually putting out the effort, they're more likely to engage and they're more likely to buy what you're selling.
Hmm.
And the problem with automation and bots is that it can't account for nuances on LinkedIn, whether they're a doctor, because you have a salutation, right?
Hmm.
And so if it screws up a salutation, they know it's a bot.
Hmm. Hmm.
It
Hmm.
doesn't put, if you're connected to a doctor and it doesn't put doctor in there, dear doctor, or I don't say dear anymore, but
Right.
I usually say hi doctor or whatever, and it'll screw it up, and then they know.
Right.
And so yeah, it just wasn't worth it to me, and it also wasn't worth it to me to risk my reputation and also risk getting my account suspended.
Right, right, definitely. That's the big fear. It has to be, especially if you're taking it seriously. But you had some nonfiction books before this, and they were primarily about mental health and addiction. So there are a few things I wanted to discuss with you about life as an addict. And the first is that I think people shouldn't kick their own asses over trying to quit a million times before they actually get some headway. I'm talking based on my own experience here, and I'll probably have to blur this or edit it out. But this is Chubby Dan when I was in my drinking heyday of 200 pounds. This is the more recent after drinking, but still
Wonderful
get
family.
into that. And so it's like when it comes to those sorts of things, I found for me that that the thing that stuck for me was I quit drinking when I caught a cold, and that broke my daily habit. And then I treated my hard liquor like a medicine, like I was weaning myself off of it. So I dropped it like 4 shots a day for
That's
a
called
week.
harm reduction. Very valid path of recovery. Very
Okay.
valid.
Awesome, and I don't want to trivialize the process because it
That's not
was
trivializing it. That is harm reduction is a valid recovery path. I mean, if someone, and it's not you, but if someone is just a full out, I'll put it in because it's a label, alcoholic, the clinical term is alcohol use disorder, you
mhm,
can't just stop cold turkey, right? Especially without going through medication assisted withdrawal.
mhm,
So you may have to do harm reduction to get there.
mhm.
Uh, so that's fine.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. All right, that's awesome. And the reason why I mentioned that I don't want to trivialize the process is because, like, I know that because you're so deep into this process that I have a risk of being flippant about it.
That's
And yeah, and
There's
so
no
like I,
flipping there. You're not the only person who has handled their drinking by scaling back, whatever their goal is, right? Whether it's abstinence or don't want to have 5 shots a week, they want to have 1 shot a week, right? So
mhm.
whatever their goal is, that's people do it all the time.
And so when I did that, that was after 20 years of me, treating getting wasted as the highlight of my day. But what do you usually emphasize to help addicts become sober like you?
I asked them first. I believe in meeting people where they are. Right. There are many. No path to recovery looks the same. Everyone's different. Some people, your path and my path are different. Look differently. I am complete abstinence. Right. I don't drink, and for me, there's no such thing as recreational use of cocaine, however you define that,
Hmm.
where you can function and do your life and have and just go on and kill it and do a few lines every week. That's not me.
Hmm.
If I have a 8 ball of cocaine, that 8 ball's gone in an hour.
Fast. Right.
Yeah, fast. So
Hmm.
mine had to be abstinent.
Right.
But I want to know. I want to know what they're doing, and I want to know how they see their life, what they want to see in their lives, 3 months or 6 months, right? and I don't try to force my path on anyone.
Hmm.
What works for me may not work for someone else. What I say is, this is what I do. If you don't, tell me what you want to do. Tell me how you want to lead your best life and how you want to get there. And let's see and put together a short-term goals for making that happen. I mean, if someone says to me, and I know this is an extreme, but I'll use an extreme to give an example. If someone says to me, I'm doing 2 8 balls a week, that's 3.5, an 8 ball is 3.5 ounces of cocaine.
Hmm.
And if I could get down to just a gram a week, I think I can live my life.
Hmm.
Uh, and have a happy marriage, and some people, be okay at work and do all these things. And I know the abstinence talks are like, oh my God, no. But you have to remember, this is meeting people where they are.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to say, no, I'm abstinent, you will die if you do not stop. I'm not going to do that. And I think that's awful. I'm not a gatekeeper of recovery.
Hmm.
And I just, people who think they are make me cringe.
Hmm.
These recovery celebrities, right? If you don't do it my way, I kicked it this way, you will die if you don't do it my way. Everyone's different. I'm not an expert in anything but my story.
Hmm.
I don't have, I'm not an addiction, I don't have a medical degree or
Hmm.
I'm not a counselor. I'm only an expert in my story.
Yeah.
So I'll say, how do you want to get there? And what's your plan? That's what I'm asking. What's your plan to get there, and how are you going to make that work? And how do you think that's going to make your life better? I'm not going to say it won't. So you take it a step at a time, and you meet people where they are.
Hmm. Hmm. I love that. I love that. And so one place where they can be, if I'm
And
gonna,
you carry Narcan at all times.
oh yeah,
Yeah?
okay, yeah,
Because
yeah.
you know what this is?
That's for overdoses, right?
That's right. Because
Yeah.
what is the only requirement for recovery? Only one.
It's
There's
not
no
doing it,
being alive.
being alive. Okay.
Narcan keeps people alive to recover.
Excellent, excellent. So I was going to do the segue into keeping a job as an active user, as an addict, and so going back to my own experience, I drank enough to scare the hell out of my family, and but it wasn't through violence or abusive behavior. And this year, I think I've had 6 bottles of wine, but no beer, no hard liquor since before COVID. And one of the things I like the most about your, actually both books, because you included it in The Ambulance Chaser as well, but you do a great job of expressing the franticness and desperation of using beyond safe limits. I like that's what really jumped out at me. So I suppose my question is if you have any stories you want to share with people who are struggling, or perhaps some advice for people who want to help somebody who is rarely sober for at least like half the day every day, as an example.
Recovery is rarely a straight line. You know how many relapses I had after not going to bed on waking up and not going to bed all night, hearing the bird, vomiting just at the sound of birds outside, being up all night doing blow, and said
Mm.
never again, never again. That's normal.
Yeah.
Recovery is normal. But what I tell people, look, is one of the biggest struggles we have is the shame that the shame that convinces us we have to do it alone, and you
Mm.
don't. And you don't.
Mm.
And there are people who want to help you, whether it's a 12-step meeting room, or if that's not your path, find the people who are not who are in recovery, who can help you, people you can talk to. It's about finding a compassionate community that is different from the community you're used to using it.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Okay, yeah, that's a lot to think of. And I mentioned the part about if you're an active user and you have a job, but like as I was reading it out, I was thinking about how that kind of exposes users a little bit more than I think might be good. And more what I'm interested in is if somebody's watching this and they're trying to take some steps towards recovery, it's that encouragement that I think.
Well, sure, but you have to remember there's a Peter principle of recovery. The
Mhm,
Peter principle is when you work up to your level of incompetence, right, in an organization, and when you get to that level, you expand yourself, you learn more, and the goal is to keep raising your level of incompetence.
mhm,
So you keep rising in the organization, and you keep learning more.
mhm,
With the Peter principle of recovery is when you are actively using, whether it's alcohol or opiates or cocaine, uh, the level of the level of incompetence tends to keep lowering. And what we do at work is we keep kneeling under it to tell ourselves we are fulfilling, that we are kicking ass. And all of a sudden you're fired. All of a sudden you mess up. So how's your life at work, right? Are you really achieving? And what are you looking to achieve? And it doesn't mean you have to stand on a pedestal at work and announce that you're an alcoholic or have a drug issue. It means go out again to that compassionate community and start trying to, one little step at a time, rein it in where you can start to raise the level slowly again before you're fired, before you have a workplace accident, before something happens.
And that goes really well into my next question, which is especially because I've been focusing for the last couple of years on building my social media audience and all that, and there's a lot of people who encourage vulnerability and like talking about self-esteem and things like that. You know, I think that when you're like, now that you're 60, I think you have far more opportunity than somebody in their 20s or 30s or 40s to be open to these topics without having real financial impact. And I guess I'm pointing out that we have little choice but to conceal some aspects of ourselves that may affect our employability.
And that's unfortunate. That's called stigma.
Right, right. And so is your advice to anybody in the audience, is it to seek help regardless of your age?
Well, I'm saying it rarely gets any better. Okay, there are a lot of people recover on their own. Without over 50% of all people recover who use drugs and alcohol problematically, stop on their own, right? And they just stop, or they modify their drinking back to social. One glass of wine every few days, and they go on with their lives. But if that's not you, it's not going to get any better. It can be a progressive disease. And you keep kicking the can down the road saying, I'll recover tomorrow, I'll start tomorrow. Next thing you know, you've wiped out a family on a highway, and it's too late. But I tell people, look, it doesn't mean you have to stand on a pedestal and announce to your workplace that you're struggling with drugs and alcohol. It means find a safe place to talk about it. Again, for me, it was the Rooms, a 12-step. There are resources online. There's intherooms.com. If you don't want to go to 12-step meetings, brick and mortar, there are countless virtual meetings. There are all kinds of resources available to find that compassionate community to help you talk about things. And I'm in counseling. I've been in therapy, and there's a privilege because I do have health insurance. Most people don't. So I would be disingenuous to not acknowledge that. That I have privilege on many levels: skin color privilege, financial privilege, health insurance privilege. But there are all kinds of resources online. You just have to, you have to look. You have to look, and it's not going to get any better. That's for sure.
Right.
But, that doesn't mean you have to stand on a pedestal. Like I said, you don't have to announce it. You just have to find your community and allow yourself to be vulnerable in a safe place within that community. No one's going to say, you're a man and blah blah blah. You have to remember you're getting into a community with people going through the same stuff. That's why that's important.
Right.
We've been socialized in our society. It's certainly not so much anymore, but coming up and through the way the U.S. has developed, men are strong, men don't cry, all these things. And we do cry. I cry all the time, and it doesn't mean I stand on a corner and cry. But you find your safe spots, you find the people you can cry with who understand, and it's okay. You heal from whatever is driving you. For me, it was a lot of childhood trauma. People, especially men, we don't like to be vulnerable. We go through childhood trauma, whatever it is, bullying, or people have been through awful trauma, right? Whether it's sexual abuse, all kinds of different things. You find a safe place to heal, because a lot of times it's trauma that's never been allowed to heal, right?
And one particular pickle when it comes to what you're describing, you're talking about community, we're talking about stigma, is I know I've heard that in Texas, the Bar Association, you can get booted for any mental health issues on its own.
Not true.
Oh, it's not true anymore. Okay.
Not true. Texas, you have the State Bar of Texas, which is the licensing organization, which protects their job is primarily to protect the public, right, from lawyers committing misconduct, malpractice, and all these different things. But we also have the Lawyers Assistance Program, which is different, where lawyers can go without fear of retribution, being exposed, completely confidential by statute, and get help.
Hmm.
So no, I mean, we do not. The people are not targeted because they have mental health issues. It is in this. It is in the interest of the bar to have healthy, uh, ethical, productive lawyers. So they want to help you, and they want to help you before it gets to them because you've done something bad.
Hmm.
So people are target. People targeted. They're not targeted. People are lawyers get disciplined for conduct, not for mental health.
Hmm.
But the problem is it can be interrelated. Often mental health struggles, addiction has a strong correlation to misconduct, right? To
Hmm.
malpractice. So the goal is to take care of the issue before it gets to that. That no one gets disbarred or suspended just because they have a mental health issue.
That's
Completely,
that's that's reassuring. That's reassuring because, like, if you are against that, it's not a conducive environment to receive help. If you're
Well, you bring up an important point. A lot of lawyers think that if they get help, it's going to get out and they'll lose their license. Not true. You're going to lose your license if you do something bad,
right,
right? And
right.
so, and that something bad has a strong correlation to maybe the substances you're using or the excessive drinking. In other lawyers, you look at the back of the Texas Bar Journal, they call it the pages of shame, unfortunately,
Hmm.
and you have lists of lawyers who have been suspended or disbarred, and a high percentage of those, probably about 50%, are going to be correlated to some mental health issue, whether it's
Hmm.
drug or alcohol or something else.
Hmm.
So the goal is to seek help before it gets to that, but you're not going to be sanctioned just because you have a mental health issue.
Okay. And my next question has to do with, I'm in a commercial real estate investment circle, and a lot of men have been asking me about, like for example, your vulnerability, it serves a purpose, okay, which is to help people who are in the grip of addiction find some hope for themselves, even when they're far gone. But my peers, they want to know if expressing vulnerability is the toll for the new online world and building an audience online. Is that something you can really comment?
I don't think I'm confident to speak to that, Dan. I mean, I'm not a digital marketer. I
Mm-hmm.
speak to the mental health circle, and vulnerability is one of the key linchpins, allowing yourself to be vulnerable in a safe place, because vulnerability helps you break through shame.
Mm-hmm.
And and I said there's nothing. Shame is a normal human defense mechanism to things we've done, right? Things that whether we've hurt someone or hurt ourselves, it's a normal human defense mechanism.
Mm-hmm.
It's a normal human feeling. But it can be a barrier to living our best lives, and in many instances. So I speak to it in the mental health circle, and allowing yourself to be vulnerable in a safe space doesn't mean you have to, you know, cry for the sake of crying. But that's very important. And I think there's a lot of data out there. It's not just me. I'm not an expert. I'm not a I'm not a researcher, but I can tell you there's a lot of data out there that validates that vulnerability is important. I mean, Brene Brown's made a whole living talking about that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, and so now that I've met you a little bit more, I'm not so sure about this part. Like you mentioned already in this interview that you took the bar exam multiple times before passing, and that jumped out at me for a few different reasons. I'm aware that you also had the addiction, and then you also mentioned body dysmorphia, which is something that I've been putting a lot of thought into it over the last year, knowing about you because of it, and part of what jumped out at me as far as the bar exam part is that I'm the overachiever in my family, and I'm aware that your brother could be literally like 1,000th of as successful as he is, and it'd be essentially the same from a family dynamic, right? Like as far as like where I call myself an overachiever, and I'm not sure if that is the word you'd use for Mark, but from the outside, that's what it seems. So my question is is it accurate that like he wouldn't have to be anywhere near as successful, and then
Oh,
still
I
you?
mean, I mean, he is where he is, and I love my brother. I'm proud of him. And I
Mm-hmm.
mean, Mark, it didn't just happen overnight. There's a
Right.
story, right? Like with everyone, there's a story where slowly but surely, Mark's been selling since he was 15 years old. And he started out, I'll tell you, you want a story? I'll tell you a story. Back in the 70s, we grew up in Pittsburgh, and there was a printer's strike. And back in those days, there were two newspapers and three television stations, or four, three including PBS, the public station. So everyone got their news from the Pittsburgh Press and the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. and the printers went on strike, so both papers shut down. I mean, disaster in the 70s. Now no one would care. They're all shutting down anyways.
Right.
But he and his buddies drove to Cleveland from Pittsburgh. It's about 200 miles. They bought the Cleveland Plain Dealer, their newspaper. They drove them back to downtown Pittsburgh and sold them on a street corner for twice what they paid for them. So he knew, I mean, this was at 16 years old. He knew how to see a need and fill a void even then. So it didn't just boom. He became this thing overnight. He worked and he scratched and he built like everyone does. And you have to get it, and preparation can make you lucky, right?
Right.
And I hear people say that all the time. Well, you were just lucky with broadcast.com. And Mark will say, well, I was lucky here too. I made all this money. Was I lucky here? Was I lucky here? Mark's he's had failures, but he's had a lot of successes. I mean, he sold quite a few years before broadcast.com was sold to Yahoo. He sold Micro Solutions. It was one of the first computer consulting ventures in Dallas. He sold it to CompuCom, and then it was CompuServe, and I don't know what it is now. Right. Back in the day, you're too young for that. But he sold it for he and his partner sold it for $5 million, and he was in his 30s. So this thing that he just suddenly poof became this, this
overnight success that doesn't exist.
Overachiever is just nonsense. Absolute nonsense.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's really great, and the reason why I bring it up, because honestly, I wanted to find a way to not really get into it, and if it's if it's really applicable, then I think it's important. And first, I'd like to mention that I appreciate you being so generous with your time. But the reason why I bring him up is I work with so many commercial real estate investors, and because of that, I often find myself defending against people who think that being a billionaire is a moral failure. And I just simply don't agree with it, because when you're in commercial real estate, if you're getting more properties in your portfolio, that means you're taking more responsibility.
Well, I mean, you remember, people feel that way. Here's something I learned in 12-step. And I've had to learn it because, I get all kinds of crap. You're hanging on your brother's jock. It's just you're only famous because of this. Well, it's my last name too. My dad gave me. But
it's also a sandwich.
What's that?
It's also a sandwich. It's a good one.
Yeah, that's right. But what people think of me is none of my business. Yeah. And I can't, if people think that or think this, I can't, what does that have to do with my goals, right? If you think that, okay, the words came out, billionaires. Oh, how has my life changed? How have my goals changed? They haven't. Yeah. They haven't. Someone says, you're a cokehead or this or that. I get that. The anonymity of Twitter and social media, right? It allows people to do that, and you just let it roll off, because how does that affect me sitting here today, the people I help, the people I will help, or the things I'm going to do, my goals? It doesn't. The whole goal is to get you upset, the people who say those things. The whole goal is to validate their point of view by getting you into an argument. Yeah. So for me, okay, that's your belief. More power to you. Knock yourself out.
Right, and they feel like crap, and they want to drag somebody else down with them.
Well, I can't even remember the last time I responded to anything like that.
Right.
Whether it's about my brother, who can fight his own battles, and the only times I've gotten involved with those things is when I view it as a family type insult or something like that from someone with a following. But it's been years. It's actually been years since I've put myself in anything like that. But it's none of my business. Whatever you believe, knock yourself out.
Right. So is there something else that you're willing to comment on the idea of no one deserves $1 billion for that crowd? It's like,
I don't agree.
Yeah.
I don't agree, and I have my reasons for not agreeing. But I've never aspired to be a billionaire. I've given plenty of interviews about we have different goals. My younger brother too. We're different people, right? Mm-hmm. And my name is Brian, and so another interesting story. Mm-hmm. Years ago, a troll reached out to me. I think it was on YouTube, actually, believe it or not. He said, your brother just gave an interview on Kramer, the guy with the bells, the financial guy. Is his name Kramer?
I think so. I know the one you're talking about, yeah.
But he rings the bells and everything. And
yeah, over the top, and yeah.
Yeah, and I forget what network he's even on. But he said, you're not motivated. One, Mark would never talk about it, right? Like that. We just don't do that. It's something they would say in private. But I went and looked for the Kramer episode. And I found it, or whatever his name is, if I'm getting it wrong.
Okay.
And I found it. And what Mark had said was the issue was, are your brothers motivated to be billionaires or for money? And he said no, and he's right.
Yeah.
And he was right. There wasn't a gig. I'm not motivated that way. That's not who I am. And I never have been. I never have been. That's never been who I am. And that's a good thing. We are all individuals. We all have our own identities. And we are, I think it's one of the things that brings us even closer together. Mm-hmm. We all have our unique identity and path.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I love that. And Brian, you took a huge chance on me doing this interview, and no one understands that better than I do. I really hope that others, like you in the audience, you got as much out of getting to know you better as I did. I just can't thank you enough for joining me today, Brian. This has been fantastic.
Well, it was a pleasure, Dan. I appreciate it. I'm sorry it took us so long to get it worked out, but here we are.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much.